Hey, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Sinister Dread Vaults podcast. Today, I have a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. This is the tale of the haunted hitchhiker, a legend I've always been skeptical about, until it happened to me. Buckle up, because this journey will take you down a dark, deserted road where the line between the living and the dead blurs. It was a moonless night, and the air was thick with an eerie silence as I drove down a lonely stretch of highway. The road was flanked by dense woods on either side, the trees looming like silent sentinels. My car's headlights pierced the darkness, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to follow me. I was returning from an investigation in a nearby town, exhausted but alert. The legend of the haunted hitchhiker had always fascinated me, but I never expected to encounter it myself. The stillness of the night was unnerving, the only sound being the hum of my car's engine and the crunch of gravel under the tires. I kept the windows slightly cracked, letting in the cool night air, hoping it would help keep me awake. Every now and then, a distant animal call or the rustle of leaves would break the silence, sending a shiver down my spine. About halfway through my journey, I noticed a figure standing by the side of the road. She was dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading around her shoulders. She looked out of place, a stark contrast to the surrounding darkness. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. "Do you need a ride?" I asked, my voice shaky. She nodded, her eyes reflecting a sorrow that sent chills down my spine. Little did I know, that simple act of kindness would lead me into a nightmarish encounter. As she opened the car door, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. She slid into the passenger seat with an eerie grace, her movements almost ethereal. The scent of lilacs filled the car, a strange contrast to the musty smell of the woods outside. Her presence was both captivating and terrifying, and I felt my heart rate quicken as I put the car back in gear and drove on. As she settled into the passenger seat, an icy chill filled the car. The air grew thick, and my breath fogged up the windshield. I tried to make small talk, but she remained silent, staring straight ahead. Her presence was unnerving, a palpable sense of dread hanging in the air. My heart pounded in my chest as I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the tension mounting with each passing mile. I glanced at her periodically, each time feeling an inexplicable fear gnawing at my insides. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "Thank you for stopping," she said softly, her voice carrying an unsettling echo. "Not many do." Her words were tinged with a sadness that was almost tangible. I tried to ask her where she was going, but she didn't answer. Instead, she began to hum a haunting melody that filled the car with an eerie ambience. It was a tune I couldn't place, yet it felt oddly familiar, like a lullaby from a distant, forgotten memory. After driving for what felt like an eternity, I finally gathered the courage to ask her where she was headed. She turned to me slowly, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "I never reached home," she whispered, her voice echoing with a haunting sadness. My blood ran cold. I glanced at her once more, and in that moment, I saw her face clearly, pale, almost translucent, with a look of eternal sorrow. It hit me like a ton of bricks, she wasn't alive. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt. My hands started to tremble, and I could barely keep my eyes on the road. I felt a deep, primal fear that I hadn't experienced since childhood, a fear of the unknown, of the supernatural. I wanted to scream, to pull over and run, but I was frozen, trapped by the haunting presence beside me. Her eyes seemed to bore into my soul, as if searching for something she had lost long ago. Panicking, I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt. "What do you mean?" I stammered, my voice trembling. She pointed to a spot up ahead, and as I followed her gaze, I saw it, a mangled wreck of a car, long abandoned and rusted. "That's where it happened," she said, her voice barely audible. The realization dawned on me, she was the ghost of a hitchhiker who had died in that very spot years ago. The stories were true. In a desperate attempt to understand, I turned to face her, but she was gone. The passenger seat was empty, yet the coldness lingered. I stepped out of the car, my legs shaky, and approached the wreck. The sight was gruesome, twisted metal and shattered glass, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had occurred. As I stood there, I heard a soft sobbing, faint but unmistakable. It was her. She was reliving her final moments, forever trapped in a loop of despair. The sobbing grew louder, and I felt an overwhelming urge to help, but I was powerless. I whispered a prayer, hoping to offer some peace to her tormented spirit. Suddenly, the sobbing stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on my neck. I turned slowly, expecting the worst, but there was nothing. The air felt thick with sorrow and regret, and I knew I had to leave. I returned to my car, but not before placing a small bouquet of wildflowers on the wreck, a silent tribute to a lost soul. Shaken to my core, I stumbled back to my car. My mind was racing, heart pounding, as I tried to process what had just happened. The haunted hitchhiker wasn't just a legend, it was real, and I had come face to face with it. Driving away, I felt a profound sadness for the spirit left behind, her story a tragic reminder of a life cut short. The road stretched out before me, but I knew I would never be the same. The rest of the drive home was a blur, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a twisted movie. I could still feel the cold touch of her presence, hear the haunting melody she had hummed. When I finally reached home, I sat in my car for a long time, trying to calm my racing heart. The experience had left me profoundly unsettled, and I knew I would never forget the look in her eyes, the sorrow that had seeped into my very soul. Thank you for joining me on this harrowing journey. The encounter with the haunted hitchhiker left an indelible mark on me, a reminder that the supernatural often walks hand in hand with the mundane. If you have any ghostly encounters of your own, please share them in the comments or reach out on social media. Stay tuned for more tales of the supernatural, and remember, sometimes, the past is never truly gone. Until next time, stay curious and stay brave.